Lesson three, getting into global trade. And you're going to notice that the world is going to become smaller by the end of this lesson. So here's where we're going to officially get into this one, how trade impacts societies. You're going to notice that industrialization, that's coming later. But trade and business, that's going to change people's lives in Europe, Africa, and then now the New World. Talking about here in a little bit. But again, look at the effects. I really want you to see the effects of all of this stuff. And again, I want you to determine which one, the Renaissance, the Reformation, or today's topic, the Columbian Exchange, which one of those impacted the history the most. So, where does this all start? Kicking it old school back to Unit 2. If you remember this map I showed you, and I talked about how this thing here is called the Silk Road, where people are traveling from Europe, essentially, Rome, Roman Empire, all the way to China to get this magical fabric called silk, which is really a status symbol. So if you notice throughout our learning, we notice how this area was eventually taken over by the Mongols. The Mongols actually got really, really rich off of the Silk Road because they allowed people to travel through the Silk Road after they paid a tax, of course, and they guaranteed their safety. So they didn't rob them, they didn't loot them, they didn't tax them basically too bad, but they made a profit off of them, which is kind of important. But the Mongols weren't around forever, and we talked about that. So eventually, you're going to see Muslims are going to start spreading during the same time period, and they're going to take over large sections of this Silk Road. Remember, we talked about it during the Crusades. So, where this kind of hits a roadblock is that the new Muslims that are taking over, they don't really want the Silk Road to be happening. So, enter in a new need. So, how did the Mongols fit into the Silk Road? So basically, how do the Mongols connect to the Silk Road? All right, so enter in a new idea. So here's a map of what the world looked like supposedly in 1400s. So if you look, this is Africa, this is Europe, this is India, and this is India. There's something missing right here. So, if we were basically sailors during the time, we're going to look at this map. And if we want to travel from China to Europe, we should just get in a boat and head west and get right there. So, enter in nautical travel. So, this is where you're going to see people from all over Europe are going to try to convince somebody to flip the bill to buy a bunch of men, to buy a bunch of supplies, and sail west. But it's super duper expensive. But one country is able to do it more so than others, Spain, because of a whole perfect storm of things. And if we had more time, we would talk about it. So this is Ferdinand and Isabella. They're going to say, sure, Christopher Columbus, useful later. Here's three boats. Here's some gold. Go make us rich. Because any land that he found, he was going to claim in the name of Spain. So he has this wild idea. I'm going to sail west. I'm going to find the fastest way to India as possible. And I'm going to get rich while doing it. So, why would he want to do that? So, here's where we've got to take a step back. And here you're probably thinking, whoops, sorry, why does Mr. Block have a picture of Pocahontas here? Because if you've ever seen this movie, you understood why first man showed up to North America. They were looking for gold. Okay. But there's also two other G's that tie into this. They're looking for glory, being the first to do something. And then they're also looking to spread the faith because if you remember, if you're Christian, you can get taxed in the name of the church. So, gold, glory, God, three G's, why. So, when you look at again why it's important is because they were traveling into the unknown and they have this new invention called gunpowder, which we talked about before, to protect themselves. And all the while, they did it for spices. You're going to notice that people did very, very dangerous things for things that we can walk in our kitchen and find really quick because food back then was blah. But Pepper and cinnamon were the major ones. But when you go into the whole idea of how it fits all together, this is all happening again during the Renaissance. People are trying to be all they can be. So, by doing all of this exploration for the various reasons that they had, because they can and they wanted to. So, question: why was travel or trading by boat a problem during this time? So, who were the first to do it? Of course, it was China. So, they had the riches, they had the manpower, and they had the will to do so. You're going to notice that they are fresh off of kicking out the Mongols, which we've already talked about, and they are going to say we need to get bigger. So, they're going to sponsor a whole bunch of travel. But the dude that they put a lot of money in was this guy named Zheng Ha. This is how it's spelled, this is how it's pronounced, but why it's important to why China did it is because they wanted to go over and take over other people. They wanted to be able to show that they were the biggest and the baddest and take them over so that way they can collect taxes from them. So, why is this all important? Is because this Zheng Ha, when he goes and he sets a voyage, he is not messing around. He is going to carry 500 people on 300 ships per 500 per ship. And you're going to notice that he is going to roll up with a huge, huge fleet. So, if he were to hit any sort of unknown danger, they'll be able to take care of themselves. But the kicker is, and what's still kind of a mystery, is that he just basically hung out in the Indian Ocean. He didn't really go east. So why does this matter? Is because he did not discover the United States or was today's United States or North America, which I'll talk about more here. He was also taking those high speed technologies that we talked about before that China was basically flaunting at the time. And this is what led them to be a world power. So here in purple is where he was going. Again, sailing down to, kind of, what's this, Indonesia, up here by India, kicking up here in the Middle East, up and down the east coast of Africa, but he didn't never made it around. And I have a map here in a little bit where he did not go east. He did not go to North America or Hawaii or anything like that. So all of a sudden, Jung Ha kind of ceases to exist. And there's a lot of different reasons on what happened to him. But at the more importantly, China kind of stopped exploring. So there's different reasons why they had to put money into the Great Wall of China. Mongols were starting to kick back up, but nobody has a really good answer. But his stories were legendary of what he was able to do, which is going to inspire other European explorers. So, what were the goals of China in their early exploration? And here's where you can kind of put food for thought. Again, China's right here. If they would have sailed east and they had plenty of resources to do so, they would have discovered North America. And our American history as we know it would have been dramatically different. All right, so kicking into the Europeans. So you're going to notice that Portugal is really going to come out swinging when it comes into world exploration. And it's going to be this guy, Vasco da Gama, that's really going to kind of set the stage. So, again, if you look at how big Portugal was on a map, very small. So they need to go out and they need to find other resources. So they are going to say, hey, Vasco da Gama, head down to Africa and try to make it to the east side, get into Asia. So he sails along the coastline, which is extremely dangerous, always constantly seeing Africa, and finally makes it around. And he actually names it the Cape of Good Hope because of that, because he was a Christian man. So when he gets over to India, he loads up on all of that fancy stuff and he returns back to Europe and he made a killing. He sold whatever he brought home for 60 times what it was worth. So, all because he was able to do it. And again, notice right there, spices. Coming back to spices. Again, their food must have been terrible. But he was actually able to set up outposts, trading outposts there, which then basically allowed more Europeans to travel. So this is actually his path right here, this orange line. Sails around the Cape of New Hope, comes over here, makes it to India. So that's it. That's kind of why it's a big deal. So here's where you're going to see world history is now officially going to become Eurocentric, meaning being told from the European point of view. And if you think back, a lot of white European dudes are most notable in our history because they're the ones that wrote the history. So I'm going to talk about Christopher Columbus in the part two of all of this. But here's the question: why was Vasco da Gama most notable in world history?